In today's video, we're going to take a look at the top 10 quarterbacks of the 1970s. Check the description down below for the formula and strap in for a trip back in time to when the Purple People Eaters, the Steel Curtain, and America's team ruled the landscape of the NFL. And our video starts right now. Okay, coming in as the number 10 quarterback of the 1970s, Dan Pastorini. Pastorini played for the Oilers from 1971 to 1979. He made the Pro Bowl in 1975, and he threw for 16,864 yards, 96 touchdowns, and 139 interceptions throughout the decade. He was sacked 222 times and produced 13 fourth-quarter comebacks and 18 game-winning drives. He added another 559 yards on the ground, scoring 7 touchdowns and fumbling the ball 58 times. Pastorini comes in at number 10 with an FGV score of 3,155.76. And now our number 9 quarterback of the 70s is Oakland Raider Ken Stabler. Stabler played all 10 years of the decade for the Raiders and would go on to play into the 80s for the Oilers and the Saints. Stabler took over the starting job in Oakland in 1973. Stabler's best year came in 1974, throwing for nearly 2,500 yards and 26 touchdowns. Stabler was then voted Offensive Player of the Year, was a first-team All-Pro, and won the league MVP, and got the Raiders to the AFC Championship game before losing to the Steelers. Now, during the 70s, Stabler threw for 19,078 yards, 150 touchdowns, and 143 interceptions. He was sacked 189 times and produced 12 fourth-quarter comebacks and 17 game-winning drives. He would go on to win Super Bowl 11 against the Vikings and was later inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2016. Stabler comes in at number 9 with an FGV score of 3,179.42. All right, our number 8 quarterback of the 1970s was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys 5th overall in 1965, Craig Morton. Now, during the 70s, Morton played for the Cowboys from 1970 to 1974, and then the Giants and Broncos from 75 to 79. Morton ended up playing 106 games during the decade and was nothing but consistent. He would go on to pass for 19,145 yards, 119 touchdowns, and 134 interceptions. He was sacked 273 times and produced 6 fourth-quarter comebacks and 12 game-winning drives. He added another 406 yards on the ground, scoring 8 touchdowns and fumbling the ball away 49 times. Morton comes in at number 8 with an FGV score of 3,226.00. Okay, moving on to number 7 quarterback of the 1970s, Archie Manning. Manning was drafted to the Saints 2nd overall in 1971 and played every other season for them throughout the decade, with the exception of missing the 76th season with a shoulder injury. Now, during that time, the Saints were incredibly bad, and Manning led the league in being sacked 3 times in 1971, 72, and 75. He also led the league in passing attempts and completions in 72, and went on to pass for 16,568 yards, 87 touchdowns, and 123 interceptions. He was sacked a total of 276 times and produced 10 fourth-quarter comebacks and 11 game-winning drives. The offensive line was so bad in New Orleans that he ended up scrambling for 1,476 yards throughout the decade, scoring 15 touchdowns and fumbling the ball away 41 times. Manning comes in at number 7 with an FGV score of 3,272.62. All right, we're halfway there. And our number 6 quarterback of the 1970s is another first-round draft pick, this time for the Miami Dolphins, Bob Griese. Griese made the Pro Bowl 6 times and the All-Pro First Team twice, and is a 2-time Super Bowl winner. He was the starting quarterback for the only undefeated team in league history, the 1973 Miami Dolphins. Now, during the decade, he threw for 18,129 yards, 140 touchdowns, and 118 interceptions. He was sacked 225 times and produced 9 fourth-quarter comebacks and 13 game-winning drives. He added another 208 yards on the ground, scoring 2 touchdowns and fumbling the ball 9 times. Griese comes in at number 6 with an FGV score of 3,683.86. So this year I've teamed up with some other awesome content creators to help raise money for men's health issues like men's health, suicide prevention, and prostate and testicular cancers. At the beginning of November, we shaved our faces, and we're growing mustaches now in support of Movember. So if there's a man in your life, a father, a brother, a husband, a weird uncle, a nephew, an in-law, or just a friend, and you feel moved enough to help them live a longer, healthier, and happier life, scan the QR code on the screen or find the link in the description and donate what you can to this great cause. I've also got a contest going for this as well. And there are 2 ways to get your hands on some super awesome sports cards of players that wore a stellar mustache of their own at one point in their career. First, any donation I receive will get 1 entry per $5 donated into a drawing for one of 10 prize lots of around 40 or 50 sports cards. And for those of you that are short on cash, just subscribe to the channel and comment with the hashtag Mustache Mania on every one of my November videos, and you'll be entered into a drawing for one of 5 more prize lots. Thank you for your time and consideration. And now, back to the video. All right, 5 down and 5 to go. Our number 5 quarterback of the 1970s made the Pro Bowl twice during the decade, Ken Anderson. Anderson played for the Bengals for his entire career from 1971 through 1986. He led the league in passing yards during the 74 and 75 seasons. And for the decade, he threw for 20,030 yards, 125 touchdowns, and 101 interceptions. He was sacked 271 times and produced 8 fourth-quarter comebacks and 12 game-winning drives. He added another 1,160 yards on the ground, scoring 11 touchdowns and fumbling the ball 32 times. Anderson comes in at number 5 with an FGV score of 3,711.40. Now on to number 4, and a 4-time Pro Bowler and an often overlooked talent, Jim Hart. Hart played the majority of his career for the Cardinals from 1966 through 1983. Now for the decade, he threw for 23,026 yards, 137 touchdowns, and 145 interceptions. He was sacked 165 times and produced 14 fourth-quarter comebacks and 15 game-winning drives, leading the league in game-winning drives in 1975 and 76. Hart comes in at number 4 with an FGV score of 3,796.54. And sliding in at the number 3 spot, the first overall pick in the 1970 draft, none other than the blonde bomber himself, Terry Bradshaw. Bradshaw played his entire 14-year career for the Steelers. He made the Pro Bowl 3 times and was a first-team All-Pro once. And he won the league MVP in 1978. He also quarterbacked the Steelers to 4 Super Bowl victories throughout the 70s and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1989. Now, for the decade, he threw for 19,918 yards, 147 touchdowns, and 163 interceptions. He was sacked 239 times and produced 11 fourth-quarter comebacks and 16 game-winning drives, and led the league in touchdown passes in 1978. Bradshaw comes in at number 3 with an FGV score of 4,138.22. Okay, just 2 more to go. Who do you think is going to be number 1? Coming in as the number 2 quarterback of the 1970s, he was actually drafted by 2 different teams in 1964, Roger Staubach. In 1964, the Kansas City Chiefs drafted Staubach in the 16th round of the AFL draft and the Dallas Cowboys in the 10th round of the NFL draft. Staubach joined the Cowboys training camp in 1968 using most of his annual military leave. Then in 1969, Staubach resigned his naval commission and joined the Cowboys full-time. He did end up sitting behind Craig Morton for a year and assumed the starting role in 1970 after Morton lost their opening game. Staubach would go on to 6 Pro Bowl appearances while winning 2 Super Bowls and a Super Bowl MVP, and then being inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. He led the league in touchdown passes in 1973 and would pass for 22,279 yards, 152 touchdowns, and 107 interceptions. He was sacked 301 times and produced 13 fourth-quarter comebacks and 21 game-winning drives. He added another 836 yards on the ground, scoring 6 touchdowns and fumbling the ball 17 times. Staubach comes in at number 2 with an FGV score of 4,161.76. And now the number 1 quarterback of the 1970s, the Scrambler, Fran Tarkenton. Tarkenton played 18 seasons in the league, Started out 6 with the Vikings and then went 5 more with the Giants before he actually returned to the Vikings in 1972 to finish out his career. He made the Pro Bowl 9 times and was a first-team All-Pro once, and won both the Offensive Player of the Year and the League MVP in 1975. He guided the Vikings to 3 Super Bowl appearances and was the first quarterback to start in 3 Super Bowls over 4 years, and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1986. Now, for the decade, he threw for 23,863 yards, 156 touchdowns, and 132 interceptions. He was sacked 238 times and produced 13 fourth-quarter comebacks and 17 game-winning drives, and led the league in pass completions 3 times during the decade, in 1975, 76, and 78. Tarkenton comes in at number 1 with an FGV score of 4,230.32. And that's my top 10 list. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.